Trump doesn't have a viable military option to open the Strait of Hormuz. Look, there's so much lying going on right now and denial about the economic realities, the economic damage that's been done. And with Trump insisting, "Oh yeah, no, we control the Strait of Hormuz. It's under our control." No, it's not. You can say that. You can say you own a unicorn with magic flying abilities. You can say that, but that doesn't make it true. Um, I would be surprised if Iran agrees to anything which limits its control over who goes in and out of the Persian Gulf right now. Um, I think it has significant leverage over Oman with respect to, um, coming up with a system that whatever, if ships are allowed to go out only through the Omani Channel, they will have to pay a toll. And Oman will collect that toll, and Iran will be a recipient for a certain percentage of those fees. Um, Likewise, if Iran is collecting fees off of ships coming in to the Persian Gulf, then Oman will be entitled to that. I think that'll be something about the nature of the deal. The problem, what undergirds all of this, it's twofold. First, it is the disruption of key commodities for the global market. And it's not just the disruption of the oil, which is predominantly sour crude, which means high sulfur content. The disruption of LNG, principally out of Qatar. Connected to that, the disruption of 40% of the world's supply of helium, because helium is a byproduct of the production of the liquid natural gas that was being pulled out of the ground in Qatar. And then the limited supplies, the decline of about 35% of the world's supply of sulfur and urea, which play critical roles in a number of industrial processes, but especially with fertilizer. So you've had this global disruption, and particularly for the oil that was coming out previously out of the Persian Gulf, there are 4 geographic centers of refinement for sour crude. And then the sour crude is used to produce diesel and aviation fuel. Those 4 areas were the Gulf Coast of the United States, now called Gulf of America, previous Gulf of Mexico, India, then the China, and last, I'll put them together, Japan and South Korea. Now, India's refining production is way down, simply because the United States got about 8 to 10% of its oil out of the Persian Gulf, and it's important that people understand that how refineries are set up. They're built to handle specific types of oil. And the simplest way to say is they're built up either to handle high sulfur content or low sulfur content. The low sulfur content is called sweet. United States produces tons of that. We got abundance. We produce so much, we're able to export that to other countries. Our problem is only 30% of our refineries are set up to handle that sweet crude. 70% of our refineries are set up to handle the sour crude. That's why the United States has to import it from Canada, Mexico, Venezuela, and formerly from Russia and the Persian Gulf. Well, now roughly 8 to 10% of what it used to import is no longer available. Meanwhile, the availability in places like India, China, and Japan, South Korea is reduced significantly. So you've got right off the bat, you got a global shortage of diesel, aviation fuel, which is why the prices of those keep going up. And yet today in the futures oil market, they're saying, "Oh, Brent, it's dropped almost $20 in 4 days, 5 days." Everybody's deluding themselves. "Oh, happy days are here again. The oil crisis is over." It's not. It's that they're lying to themselves. They're lying to the world. And you can tell those lies all you want, but then when you go to fill up your truck with diesel, reality hits you right in the face. about the increased price. And then, related to that, step back and look at the global choke points for oil, for movement of all maritime traffic, not just oil, not just LNG, bulk goods, container ships. You got the Malaccan Straits. Okay, they're open. You got the Strait of Hormuz, closed. You got Bab el-Mandab, restricted. You got the Suez Canal, so far still open. You got the Bosphorus, which is that you've got, coming out of the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. You got Gibraltar. And you got the Suez Canal. And the Suez Canal is screwed up. So you've got, at least, because the lack of rainfall is preventing, they cannot handle the number of ships that they normally did. And China, despite all the U.S. threats, et cetera, and trying to exert control over Panama has now made a secret deal with the Chinese. Chinese companies are back in control of the Strait of the Suez Canal. I mean, the Panama Canal. So we got a disruption, global disruption on maritime supply routes, supply chains. So you got that. You got the economic, the recessionary, if not depression rate on global supplies. And yet everybody's pretending, oh, everything's cool, all's normal, all good. So this is a financial crisis that when it explodes, it is going to be global, and it is going to be devastating for countries around the world. And sit here and pretend that it's not real. Oh, everything's okay. We got it under control. They do not have it under control. It's one damn lie after another. Trump doesn't have a viable military option to open the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, no country or group of countries in the world have the viable military capability to force open the Strait of Hormuz without suffering significant maritime losses. Iran simply is too well entrenched, too well armed to be able to carry that off in a way that it would force Iran to back off. And what took place over the weekend, where Trump had vowed a massive campaign. Now, I'm not sure it would have compared with what was done in the early days of this war. I mean, what was done between the first 3-4 weeks, starting from February 28th. It was a significant, massive campaign, but turned out it did not weaken Iran. If anything, it strengthened Iran. So, and I know that the U.S. military people I was in touch with, they fully they were geared up. They thought this thing was going to jump off on Saturday night at about 6 p.m. Eastern time. Didn't happen. Trump pulled the plug. So the question is, why did he pull the plug? And I think it may be a combination of factors. One was reportedly he got a insistent plea from Saudi Arabia saying, don't do it. Because Iran said, if you hit their power plants, if you hit their nuclear sites, they're gonna destroy ours. And the Saudis said, no, we don't want any of that. The other element, though, is the United States is running out of weapons. And they keep claim, no, that's not the case. Nonsense. I just put a piece up at sonar21.com last night on gallium. The galling reality of the gallium chokehold. Because gallium is a critical mineral that is you can't build a fully functioning F-35 fifth-generation fighter without it. And guess what? The United States supply of gallium is zero. It doesn't have any. Where does it come from? China. Gallium is a byproduct of aluminum production. The United States, when it moved away about 40 years ago from producing aluminum, let that production process go overseas to other countries, lost its ability to take that aluminum and extract the gallium from it. So now the United States is totally dependent upon China, and China is telling us with gallium, we're not giving you a damn ounce. And it's not just for F-35s, it's for precision strike missiles and other, we're out of PAC-3s, we're out of THAADs. They need gallium in those too. So the United States is now confronted with the situation where we want to use military force that we do not have. Or if we use it in any sort of sustained, intense fashion, we're going to deplete ourselves to a level that we cannot replace it within the foreseeable future, 2 to 3 years. Not replaceable. And this is not me being alarmist. This is it's an absolute fact. And they refuse. They keep denying. They keep lying about, oh, no, we got plenty. No, you don't.
Yeah, the horrible thing is that the gallium is also used in those radars, which the Iranians have been blowing up across the Middle East. And I might get the numbers wrong, but I think about 99% of the gallium comes out of China. So
yeah,
well, that's
you're right.
real nice with China if you want to fight a war with China in the future, it seems. But Trump, as you said, he issued now this final warning. He said, well, he issues those every now and then. The final warning to Iran, now make a deal or, we'll annihilate you. And I guess all these rounds of attacks on Iran, the objective is to wear them down and, either capitulate or at least get a favorable deal out of them. But one gets the impression the opposite is achieved because, while of course Iran can be worn down a bit, you see these continued attacks on Iran, it suddenly makes them not believe in diplomacy anymore for good reasons. As you said, the energy markets and global economy also goes from bad to worse. So
Right.
though the Iranians are getting advantage, and as you suggested, every round of attacks, the U.S. depletes its weapon stockpile. So, and the Iranians know this. So if the U.S. is going to play hardball with the Iranians, they know there's a limit to what the U.S. can do now. So it seems as if all of this escalation, it could have the opposite effect. But what do we actually know, though, specifically about how bad the weapons, the lack of weapons are? I mean, I guess hard to have accurate information given that I assume there would be some secrecy around this.
Well, yeah.
What weapons are missing?
So you can go to open source. So I wrote about this. People can go back and look at March 3rd of this year at sonar21.com. And I went through the open source because the open source regarding the PAC-3 missile, the Patriot missile. And we know from open source that from 2015 to 2020, so that's 6 years, the United States was producing, it said, between 100 and 300 a year. So just for the sake of estimate, I said, let's go with 300 every year. Let's give it the full benefit of the doubt, man. They were maxing it out. Then for 21, 22, 23, 24, those 4 years, they produced 500 a year. Okay, so that's 2,000 plus 1,800. So that's 3,800. And then in 2025, I think the number was that they produced like 620. So, that takes you up to like 4,220, 4,260. That's the maximum. So that was as the end of 2025. Okay. Then you start doing subtraction. How many missiles were given to Ukraine that they fired? Remember, every time they fire a PAC-3, they're firing 2 against one incoming target. Estimated they gave Ukraine roughly 1,000. Okay. So we go from 3,600 down to, or 4,600 down to 3,600. How many were given to Israel and used by Israel during the 12-day war? Well, in June of 2025. Take off another 800. How many have been used in the course of the first 42 days of this war this year, and then over the last few weeks? Guarantee at least 1,500. And then out of that, look at that total 4,620 number, at least 1,500 of those had gone to foreign. So they're out. for all practical, they're out. They can pretend, oh yeah, we got plenty. Nonsense. They don't. And it's not a matter of just turning to Lockheed Martin, flipping the switch. Say, okay, yeah, build us some more, because they need the rare earth minerals. I can't, want to beat this into people's heads. This is so critical to understand. It's just not a matter of, do we have the willpower to make it? Yeah, you may have the willpower, but you don't have the material you need. And then on top of it, apparently, the PAC-3 missile has got like 20 or more subcontractors that each make like one little part. Then each part has to be tested. So, getting them assembled becomes a multi-year process. I mean, it's insane. So, the United States could pretend, and same with Tomahawks. Right now, they're saying the United States has about 2,000 left. All I can say is what we know for certain is during the first 5 weeks of the war that started on February 28th, the United States fired 850, according to U.S. sources. So that got that down to 2,000. And remember, that's 2,000 for the entire Department of Defense, all the regional commands, for Pacific Command, for European Command, for Central Command. I don't think they give any to AFRICOM, Africa Command, or SOUTHCOM, the South America or South Central America Command. But if you take 2,000 and divide it 3 ways, that means PACOM's got 750, roughly. That Central Command has 750, and EUCOM has 750. PACOM says, hey, we need it in case we have to go to war with the Chinese. And the European Command says, hey, we got to have it in case we have to go to war with Russia. And so, if CENTCOM burned through 850 in 5 weeks, they're left with 750 now. Tell me about how long you can sustain an intensive campaign. So, I mean, it's like the United States has created a system that is so counterproductive that it cannot meet its own defense needs anymore. The supply chains are dependent upon China principally. And notice Iran doesn't face those obstacles. Iran's supply chains are secure with China and with Russia. And it can build whatever it needs underground and has been building underground. And it's not having to worry about going out and competing, having different publicly traded companies compete to build it. And quote, you never get it built properly.
Yeah, I see the benefit though in terms of seeming all-powerful. That is when Trump says, actually, we have more missiles now than we did before the war. I mean, but still, when you look at the not just the numbers, but the actions being taken. For example, when the U.S. pulled its missiles out of East Asia to send it to the Middle East, or diverted from Europe down to the Middle East, obviously this wouldn't be done if there wasn't a shortage. And as we see now, even in the media, which has been sharing on this war, they're now also recognizing increasingly that yes, this is a huge problem. That is narrative control. It can be quite powerful if one deters or fools the adversary, but self-delusion is something different. This is very dangerous.
Well, and it's not, Glenn, it's not confined just to what's going on with Iran. My God, it is. I challenge anybody to go on to Grok or Claude or ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Kimi, use any of them and ask the question, how much territory has Russia taken in Ukraine this year? Oh my God, Russia's lost territory. And you're going, what? I mean, and what they're basing it on, what these search engines based on, is they take information from people like the Institute for Study of War, and it's algorithmically rated higher, more reliable than anything out of the Russian Ministry of Defense, and of what they call open source intelligence, which is essentially CIA disinformation put out on the web. And these engines absolutely insist that Ukraine has taken more territory from Russia than Russia's taken territory from Ukraine, despite the fact that right now in Sumy, you can see the armies have swept forward and are enclosing Sumy. The same thing, the Russian army enclosing and encircling Kharkiv. They have advanced significant Konstantinovka in Ukraine, except Ukrainians keep saying, "Oh no, we still got control of that." And so these AI search engines go, "Well, I mean, if Ukraine said it, it's got to be true." I mean, it's just such total horse shit. But it's put out there as a fact, shaping public perceptions when the reality on the ground is 180 degrees opposite. And we're seeing the same thing with respect to Iran. They keep talking about Iran's weakness. Iran has driven the United States military effectively out of the Persian Gulf. It's knocked out at least 19 radars and or satellite communication systems. It's forced the United States to withdraw personnel from bases, Army bases in Kuwait, from the naval base in Bahrain, from the Air Force base in Al Udeid in Qatar, and locate where? They're going primarily to Israel. They've even forced them out of air bases in Jordan because they've come under sustained attack.
But do you see Iran changing its posture a bit or its tactics? That is, I got the impression from the beginning of this war that Iran has been largely reacting to US moves. That is, if the US attacks, the Iranian response in a somewhat symmetrical way. That is, it demonstrates its ability to go up the escalation ladder with the United States. And
Yeah.
it's been quite successful at this. And it's also quite a powerful move because the US now knows that Iran predictably can escalate if it does. So the consequences of escalation are quite clear. It's not as if they can bomb Iran's, for example, critical infrastructure without seeing this exact same thing being hit across the Gulf states. So it knows it can't pressure Iran further, which is why the US is cautious to go further up that escalation ladder. And indeed, it must de-escalate. However, that being said, it also, by Iran simply responding to the US, it also handed a lot of power over to the US because it essentially gave the US escalation control. That is, it can decide when the war begin, it can bomb 1 week and then decide, oh, let's negotiate the next. And sometimes this seems to be coordinated, that the bombing begins or bombing begins when the stock market closes, and then it ends when it opens. And we have, of course, these talks about, oh, now we're going to talk again. But the problem is, it also suggests, why would the US have any restraint if it can decide when the war begins, when it ends? And I was wondering if you see any changes now with Iran, if they're going essentially on the offensive, because Iran appears to have changed its approach a bit. As you saw with the attack on Jordan, as you mentioned, the US, I think the White House referred to it as a surprise attack on Jordan. But, my God, there's a war. The US attacked Iran.
Yeah.
It's a bit strange to talk about a surprise attack, but what they meant was that the US had halted its bombing, and it assumed that then Iran has to do the same, because Iran should always mirror what the US does. But you see the Iranians essentially, changing its game now, or may I read too much into this, perhaps?
No, I don't think you're reading too much into it. I mean, let's look at what's happened over the course of the last 2 weeks, even after um, Iran has continued to attack U.S. bases in Erbil, Iraq, that are primarily CIA Special Operations Forces bases that are there to provide training and assistance to the Kurds in anticipation of the Kurds launching attacks inside Iran. So Iran has been ruthlessly and relentlessly attacking those and blowing up both installations and personnel. We saw yesterday again that Iran launched attacks in Kuwait at U.S. Military installations. So not waiting for them to fire back. They're going after them. I think today we're going to see. So Arbaeen is over, if I recall correctly, and Iraq is going to retaliate against the Saudis and the United States for that last attack that killed both IRGC and Iraqi members of their, let's call it the paramilitary group that's part of the government. They vowed they'd retaliate, but they were going to wait till after Arbaeen and the pilgrims leave, are no longer at risk. So no, Iran's not going to sit back and be a punching bag anymore. And if they and that was like the other night when they hit targets in Jordan, that was, the surprise attack. They were quite clear. Hey, we're going after. They saw something. They took a preemptive step against it.
Yeah, that makes sense. But for the Iranians, the long-term, I guess, ticket for security would be, I mean, if I was Iranian, I would want to essentially destroy the entire US military ecosystem of the region. That is, well, they have bases yeah, again, across the Gulf states. There will always be this incentive to build up an alliance. And indeed, well, this is not advocacy. I'm just saying, if it was Iranian, I see the security situation being in their shoes. This is how I would see it, that this should be the long-term path for security. Now, you can achieve this through some means. You can, of course, control the Strait of Hormuz and put some, geoeconomic pressure on the Gulf states to scale back their security partnership with the United States, or you could just destroy all the bases and, well, essentially make it clear to the US that its bases in the region are vulnerable. They're not as asset, they're a vulnerability, and also signal to the Gulf states that their countries will not be more secure, but they will be more exposed. If
Right.
that message comes across, the US would have an incentive to, I guess, pull back a bit. I'm not sure if they can move everything to Israel, but yeah, it's essentially get rid of the bases in the near proximity of Iran. Because this will also shift the politics of the region by having US bases, as we also see in Europe. But do you see how do you see the likely success of that objective? Because it is quite a grand objective, one has to say. I mean, the US military is the most formidable in the world.
Well, I disagree. It's the most expensive in the world. Expensive and formidable are two different things. We've already demonstrated the limits of the power of the U.S. Navy. On paper, yeah, man, you've got this powerful, these aircraft carriers, strike groups, man, who can stand against them? The Houthis. They demonstrated that over the course of 18 months, starting in December of 2023, once they declared a shutdown, basically, of normal ship traffic through the Red Sea. And then, the first Operation Prosperity Guardian tried to stop them. And then Trump said, oh, no, we're not a bunch of wimps and weaklings like Biden. We're going to show you Trump's in charge now. And so Trump launched the new initiative, Operation Rough Rider, back in March of 2025. And 7 weeks later, after losing one MQ-9 Reaper per week, and each one goes for a tune of about $65 million apiece. So they came close to losing almost $500,000 worth of Reapers. And then 3 F-18s that, under different, one fell off the ship, one got damaged by friendly fire, who knows what happened to the other one. And those aircraft come up to probably another 300 million combined. So it's all of a sudden you're out almost $1 billion. And Trump's declared, the Houthis have capitulated. We're going home. The rest of the world saw it for what it was. The United States didn't compel them militarily to surrender, not at all. So what has transpired, despite the promises of the United States to the Gulf Arabs, we got your back. We're here to defend you. Come on, trust us. Who can withstand us? And now here those guys are 5 months later into this war going, looks like Iran can withstand you. Not only can Iran withstand you, Iran has forced you out, and you have been unable to protect us. You've been unable to defend us. You promised us these air defense systems that don't work. You had to spend billions of dollars on your military equipment that doesn't work. We're less secure, not more secure now. And the United States, how's it replied? It's abandoned those bases. In Al Udeid, it used to be it was the de facto forward headquarters of AFCENT, Air Force Central Command. It's, the nominal base was in South Carolina, but the actual the general, commanding general, the staff, all the activity, it was there forward at Al Udeid because they had this massive $1 billion plus radar, a couple of other radars. They were able to see everything in the area. They were on top of it. And just before the start of the war, the Central Command, Bubba's went, you know what? It's going to be too exposed there. We better get these guys out. They relocated it all to Shaw Air Force Base. But they thought, hey, we still got the coverage of radar. And within the first 2 weeks, Iran had destroyed the radar. So now they're blind. Now they're dependent upon AWACS and Poseidon 8s to give them ISR information because the ground radars are gone. They're history. And they're not coming back soon. Because you know what? They too need gallium and other rare earth minerals. And the Chinese are saying, no, we're not selling you that. So the United States has been effectively run out of the Gulf. And I think much to the surprise and shock of the Saudis, Qataris, Bahrainis, etc. They keep trying to figure out how to rope the United States back in, but the United States does not have the abilities to sustain military operations at those forward locations.